Tanya Simmons. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining the Breaking Through the Void Summit. I am delighted to speak to you today. I love the work that you do and the work of Brain Gym, and I think it's so relevant for people in the summit. So I'm really, really happy to be speaking to you about it today. So the title of our topic is Accessing the Intuitive Brain of the Heart for Balanced Daily Living in a Transitioning World, which I think probably sums up the premise of the summit in that one sentence. You know, we all need those techniques and tools to get us through this crazy world right now. So I'm just going to read your biography very quickly for anyone that may not be aware of you and your work, and then we'll get started. Thank you. So, Tanya, you've been a practicing therapist and educator for over 30 years. In 2001, you were joyous to discover the effective tools and methods to improve learning through Brain Gym or educational kinesiology, and that led you to specialise and train as a consultant, dive into the fascinating and ever-expanding world of neuroscience, and teach how it correlates our experience of life and our mind-body relationships. Originally from the UK, you now live in New Orleans, and you hold Brain Gym training courses in New Orleans as well as nationally and internationally. And you run a busy private practice for children, adults and teens using Brain Gym, coaching, EFT and other mind-body modalities to facilitate whole brain function, release trauma, transform academic challenges like ADD, and help people to achieve their goals and full potential. You are also the creator of Qi Gym, a weekly movement class that combines simple Qigong with Brain Gym to rewire the brain and the body. Sounds amazing. I can't wait to find out more. So let's get started. What's your story? How did you come into this line of work, and how has it changed you, inspired you?
First of all, I'd love to say, how delighted I am to be speaking with you, and what a marvellous thing it is that you're doing. This is so needed, this information. We all need to share our resources at this time and globally affect a change where people are walking around a lot more in their bodies, much more relaxed and able to deal with these transitional times in a way which is much more joyful and not so stressful. And there are simple ways to do it. So I'm very, very happy to be here and to share whatever I can to your listeners. How I came into this was, I've been a therapist for over 30 years now, which of course dates me, but it's been a fabulous journey. And of course, I'll never stop learning and never stop growing. Prior to that, as a child, my experience of education was very difficult, and I found school interminably difficult. It was so hard to be seated and being told to do things, and I'm a very kinesthetic learner, which I found out, during the early years of my Brain Gym training. I became very aware that I really need to move to learn, and for me, discovering why that is so. Movement grows our brains from in utero onwards. I'm going to be talking to you more about that. So school was very difficult for me, and I was a very shy child, and it wasn't, most of my childhood I think I've blotted out because going to school every day wasn't easy for me. I don't remember too many joyful times about being at school. And I knew I was intelligent and I knew I was capable, but the very logic-based school curriculum, for the most part, didn't assist a child like myself. So in my teens, I managed to get mononucleosis, also called the Epstein-Barr virus, and had to lose a year, go back a year, which further sort of reduced my delicate self-esteem as a teenager to sort of being, not so big. My wonderful mother at the time decided, after no luck with any medical intervention to get me healed, took me to a reflexologist. And within 3 months, following her protocol, taking some really good nutrition and getting these treatments, I was really feeling great again, and motivated and physically really strong. And I remember saying to my mother, one day I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a reflexologist. I'm going to train in that. So I did finish school. I didn't go to university at the normal time. Instead, I went to work abroad as a travel representative and taking people on tours all over Europe. And that was a fantastic training for me. It was better for me than a formal education, because I was pushed to giving large talks to large groups of people on stage with a microphone and having to step out of any shyness. So it was a very building time for me, and really restored my self-confidence. And it was a very, very exciting time of my life, but I knew it wasn't what I was really meant to do. So I came back to the UK when I was about 23, 24, and asked myself, what do I really want to do? What am I really here to do? So I found I was drawn to a wonderful training clinic in Brighton and Hove in the south of England, the Wilbury Clinic, and I went on to train as a massage therapist, deep tissue work, physical therapy, reflexology, aromatherapy, and found I had this wonderful aptitude to working with people and helping people feel better, which I used to find really rewarding. I went on to teach at the clinic for many years and did a teacher's training, and trained all over southern England in adult education to teach people, how to do hands-on work. And it always fascinated me that people would transform through body work, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Particularly something I did, which was Indian head massage, which I learned from my ex-husband and his family, the Indian family. And round about in my late 30s, early 40s, late 30s, I discovered brain gym, because I was beginning to find something was missing. I wanted to do something else. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine who's an applied kinesiologist, he said, look into brain gym. So I did, and immediately got this great big, yes, this is what I need to do. From what I read, it already was explaining to me why we feel better when we're moving, why we need to be touched, why we need all the things that we share in educational kinesiology, brain gym. Mm-hmm. So I went on to train in this and did a myriad of courses from then on in related modalities, but very much in brain gym. How it's changed me is it's made me become very self-aware. It's slowed down my mind, and I used to have a real monkey mind, all over the place. If I'd been diagnosed with a label, it would have been something like ADD, or all over the place, really big thinking brain. And I've learned to really hone that down to be a very focused, calm, aware thinking brain. And it's because of the accumulation of these tried and tested techniques that I've just brought into my everyday life. Can't live without this at all. So having seen this in myself, radical transformation over the last 20 years, just building, and then in the hundreds of people I've worked with and trained over the last 15 years, there's no doubt in my mind that this work and related work like this is what we need to survive in this world. So there's many changes happening in the world, as you know, and hence you're doing this wonderful summit. And it's my opinion that it's changed for the better. I think people are going to, if we can move into this transition effortlessly, easily, and into this new world, we're going to be able to enjoy it, but we need to know how to do that. And one of the ways is to get out of your mind and more into your body.
So, and it's really interesting you say that, because I'm the same as you, very ADD, all over the place. I'm good with the bigger picture, but I struggle to hone my attention sometimes, and my focus, especially if I'm not clear how to move forward, or it's something I don't want to do. And for many of us that are stuck in this void and in this place, you know, that's often the way, isn't it? That's what prevents us from moving forward. So I'm fascinated to hear how being more embodied can do that. So can you tell us a little bit about Brain Gym? Give us some examples.
Yeah, certainly. So Brain Gym, brain, your brain, and gym, going to the gym for your brain. It's a part of educational kinesiology. And it's based on the thorough and outstanding clinical research of Dr. Paul Dennison, who in the 1960s and the 70s focused on the causes and the treatment of learning difficulties. So his research in behavioral science and optometry and movement and perceptual motor training and dominances and cognitive skills led to the educational kinesiology training courses. I think the first one was in 1981, and then the Educational Kinesiology Foundation organization was created in, I think, 1987. It's a non-profit worldwide organization that's now in over 90 countries and in 50 different languages. And we train people all over the world. So Dr. Paul Dennison was way ahead of his time. It's now seen with the explosion of neuroscience that we are in, that the human brain and our understanding of the brain, Dr. Dennison was way ahead of his time and knew things that only now are really being substantiated by cutting-edge science. So the basis of Brain Gym is that movement grows your brain.
Okay.
And that we can wire and rewire our brains throughout our life. Our brain doesn't atrophy unless we don't use it, and if we don't give it the nutrition and what it needs in order to be a fertile, wonderful brain. We can live with a great brain to the very end of our life, and we're supposed to. Brain Gym is a lot more than just movement exercises. There's 26 in total, but on the training courses that I do, and in the one-to-one sessions that I do, we do something called a balance. And that's a 5-step process where movement and conscious intention are drawn out and combined to wire and rewire new positive neural pathways in the brain. Mm-hmm. And this has a very, very beneficial effect in our lives. It's now, really seen in neuroscience that how we think affects immediately our physiology. So one thought, every single thought we have produces a cascade of biochemical reactions in our brain and body, in every single cell in our body. And we can produce, stressful ones like cortisol and adrenaline, and have a very stressful heart rate variability. I think you've had wonderful people like Roland McCraty talking on your summit already, where he explains.
It links in brilliantly with HeartMath. And
all of their work has really backed up the work of Paul Dennison over all these decades. I'm so grateful to that fabulous company. So yeah, we lost my train of thought there.
Sorry.
We can vibrate at basically a sort of stressful level or a much higher level.
Yeah.
And we are beginning to realize more and more, I mean, it's now pretty established in neuroscience that our thoughts create our reality.
Yeah.
They make changes in our body, and our brain waves and heart waves react to our thinking. So easy to say, and for some people it's very difficult to do because they can understand that, but it's not happening in their day-to-day life. But they just need to know some really simple things. And I would imagine that there's a theme that runs through several of your speakers on the summit, which is about being self-aware and coming into this moment. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? Let's do a little bit of Brain Gym. Let's do a little bit of Brain Gym right now, which will help you and me and our listeners to being in their body. You can get an effect of this. Okay. So start with a little bit of unrolling your ears. So if you and everyone listening wants to just unroll your beautiful ears all the way from top to bottom.
So we're just pulling them out?
Just like uncurling them
Yeah.
and stimulating them. So your left ear feeds information mainly to the right side of your brain.
Okay.
Your right ear feeds information mainly to the left side of your brain.
Okay.
So doing this, we're helping our listening skills. We're activating the gravitational, vestibular system.
Yeah.
Balance. Very, very important. Our vestibular system is so important to optimal brain function because it works with our eyes and our ears. Is it Sperry? Dr. Sperry, a behavioral scientist, said that 90% of our brain's output is focused on balancing ourselves in gravity. So we need to be really in our bodies for our brains to be functioning really well. Then the rest of the energy can be for thinking and being here. So also what we're doing there is helping ourselves to be able to hear the environment, to hear the big picture with the right brain, the gestalt brain, to hear the details with the left brain, the logic brain. And to hear the tones between the words. That's much more of a gestalt, the right brain. Most people's gestalt brain is on the right, so for ease and purpose of explaining, I'll call it a right and left hemisphere. So so the right hemisphere hears the tones, what's really being said. So someone might say something and you hear something else. You might hear something else, an emotional part of it that isn't perhaps said in the words, and you have to trust that. So we'll be also stimulating the brain to be able to use its short and long-term memory through hearing. I'll give you also 4 movements that we can do to become very whole-brained, and then I'll explain some more things about why we aren't always whole-brained.
Okay.
But if I do this now, we're going to be in a whole brain state to be able to take in the rest of the information. So in Brain Gym, we do something called PACE. PACE is an acronym that stands for positive, active, clear, and energetic. And it's a 4-step process that puts us into a really whole brain state where we may not be anymore. And because with stress, we'll lose some of the functions or switch off part of the functions of our brain in order to be able to deal with the perceived stress at hand. So in PACE, the very first thing we do is what I just saw you do, which was drink water. Now, for any of your listeners, if you have got a glass of water with you, have a little sip. So just holding water in your mouth for a few seconds gets right through the brain-blood barrier, and every single cell in your body gets the message that it's hydrated. So our brains are 90% water. Our bodies are around 75% water. This is, we're very, very much water. We really need to be hydrated. Drinking tea, coffee, soft drinks, Coca-Cola, all of these things are not hydrating your body. They're actually diuretics and dehydrate your body because your kidneys need to filter out the particles in the dissolved particles in the drink, and so draw more water out of the system in order to flush them out. So we need to drink more water if we're a big tea, coffee, soft drink drinker. And I'm, being British, really love my tea, so I have to up my water. I really work hard at drinking a lot of water. But my body really calls for water now. It's something I've trained over many years to be a very good water drinker. But water is really necessary with the electrolytes to carry electrical messages through neural pathways.
Okay.
So it's water that conducts these electrical messages that we are constantly sending around our brains and bodies. So then the next thing we do as part of PACE is we put one hand on our bellies. So one hand on your belly, which is your gravitational center. Okay. Center of you. I teach Qigong and something I've invented called Qi Gym as well, which is a combination of Qigong, Brain Gym, and your core, your center, your hara, your lower dantian, as it's called in Qigong, is very important. It's your power place. So connecting with that, there's a whole nerve network in there, really gets you already very much more in your body. And then one hand goes on your chest, and we wiggle two little, they're called brain buttons, just underneath your clavicle. So you've got this lovely bone here, the collarbone, the clavicle, and just underneath there, about an inch away from the midline, are these brain buttons.
That's a bit painful. Is that normal?
Yeah, that's really good feedback. So for many people, if they're not used to doing this, it might be painful or a little tender, and that's okay. That will go with time. But you're stimulating two really important points here called the kidney 27 point in acupuncture.
Yeah.
It's also an electrical reflex point for the eyes. So if we just move our eyes gently from side to side, and that satisfies the scanning reflex. So it brings our eyes to be back here to the task at hand in our midfield. Under stress, we'll lose particularly one of our eyes to go more in the periphery to look for danger. So we're not here, we're not able to really concentrate at something at hand. So if a child's not feeling safe at school or being poked in the back by the kid behind him or can't understand what's going on, the eyes are going to start feeling unsafe. The body's going to feel unsafe, and the eyes will start looking in the periphery for danger. So this is another way to help feed oxygen and blood to the brain. There's two main arteries that come straight up here to the brain, so that's another thing we're doing here. So the brain needs 10 times more oxygen than any other part of the body. And it's only 1/50th of the weight, but it needs a lot more. So the next thing we do as part of PACE is we do cross-crawling. So I'm going to push my chair back and just show you this. If you're sitting down, you can also do it sitting down, but you're going to connect your opposite hand to your opposite knee. I don't know if you can see me there. This is called crossing your midline. It's called cross-crawling. And what we're doing here is, in order to do this movement, your brain has to fire neurons to cross the corpus callosum. So it fires neural pathways in the left, to the left and right hemispheres. And it also stabilizes the pelvis, whilst also stabilizing the shoulders, which helps walking. And this stabilization of gross motor activity ultimately helps when performing fine motor activity. So gross motor activity is large muscles. Fine motor is when you're drawing a beautiful picture or writing a letter or doing work. So it allows these muscles to be released and relaxed, and then you're much more able to use your hands for fine motor work. So that's really important. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the origin of this. When a baby crawls, it's building millions of neurons in the corpus callosum, which is the only part that connects both hemispheres of the brain. And it's a very, very important part of a child's development, crawling. So allowing your child to crawl as much as possible is fantastic brain development if you have a little baby. I'm rather anti these little walker chairs because they don't give the brain the chance to develop a really healthy balance between both hemispheres. The last thing we do for PACE is putting your thumbs out. So if you can see my thumbs there, put your thumbs down, cross your hands over and link your fingers, and then bring your hands under and up. And just rest your hands there if that's comfortable. If it's really uncomfortable, you have any problem there, just link your fingertips, clasp your hands together. And then cross your ankles. You can do this sitting down or standing up, and rest your tongue on the roof of your mouth. So it makes an electrical connection with your limbic brain, just resting there. And start breathing deeply. And this one's called hookups, and it's for really relaxing the emotions, bringing them back to be much more relaxed. It helps the emotional brain to stop connecting more with the back part of the brain, brainstem, and coming much more to be able to communicate with the prefrontal cortex, which is where we do our more rational, deep thinking, creative thinking. So it restores us to find our equilibrium and calms us down. I've had wonderful results with this, where I might have got stuck in very low level feelings or moods or angry feelings or frustration for a long time in the past. I use this now, just use this really quickly, and within a few minutes I'm back into my center. And I've seen this work with transformational results over and over again with people. So if you only remember this, take this one away. This is fantastic. And it's called hookups in brain gym. It's called hookups since the 1960s. Though they might need to change the name, I think, because nowadays that means something else, I think, with the younger generation. So anyway, so that and we finished that one by linking our fingers together and just connecting, and that's very symbolic of both brain hemispheres connecting. It actually connects your meridians, and acupuncture. Acupuncture has had a lot of recognition in the last decade or two as science has caught up with understanding how acupuncture works, and they've injected radioactive gadolinium into said acupuncture points and seen that, yes, indeed, these meridians definitely do exist. So it's all really beautifully coming together in this age. It's a very exciting time. So that's PACE, yeah.
Thank you for that. And it's always nice to see something brought alive by trying it. And I hope if those watching and listening had a go, and are feeling a little bit different. So I guess my next question was going to be about sort of how does it help and who does it help? But I think we kind of answered that. I mean, what I was hearing is, the theme of this summit is when we are in that place where we're stuck and we're not able to take action, or we feel really low, or just we don't know which way to turn. What I'm hearing from you is that the more embodied we can get, the more we get out of those stuck kind of thinking patterns or stuck places that we find ourselves, and we have more capacity to think clearly, to access intuition, just to be more grounded. Have I understood that correctly? Is that accurate?
Absolutely, yeah. This can be used. This is used a lot in the academic sector. It has wonderful results in education. So I get a lot of teachers and parents and occupational therapists and I've had grandparents and everything coming to my courses. And although it's great for helping with academics, I work with a lot of adults who use this work to be able to learn how to use their brains. I had a gentleman once who was a lawyer, and he came to me saying that I've heard brain gym could really help me read. He said, I'm a successful lawyer, but I've never been able to read fluently. I can read the same paragraph over and over. And he said, and it doesn't have any meaning for me. So I delegate a lot of my reading, which costs me a lot of money, but that's the only way I can efficiently function. So we did some brain gym, and very early on in our first session, I asked him to do the cross crawl, where we touch opposite knees. Mm-hmm. And he kept reaching for the same side, and he couldn't actually cross his midline, which showed me that he had been relying very heavily on one hemisphere, which we do if we're stressed or traumatized in some way. So we did brain gym. After 2 or 3 weeks, he came back, and having done the exercises I suggested, and he was extremely happy because he'd managed to read a whole book effortlessly and easily, taken a lady friend out for dinner and told her all about it. And it was wonderful to see that he could then cross his midline, and his brain was operating in a way which he hadn't had access to probably all his life. And I found out that he had a very traumatic childhood. So I think I think what'd be more useful is to explain to you why we do switch off functions of our brain, what switches off the brain, and then how we can, some of the simple things I use, not just brain gym, but many of the various modalities I've done, which are all linked, and how I use simple techniques to bring us back into the body.
Yeah.
So hold your brain a moment, like just hold two sides of your brain, and those of you listening, if you want to as well. And you're holding the two main hemispheres, the two hemispheres of your brain, the right and left hemispheres. So that, as I say, they're only connected by the corpus callosum. And in brain gym, we work with the brain in a very simple manner, seeing it as a triune brain. This is one part of the brain, the two hemispheres. The other part is the front and back part of the brain, where the brainstem communicates with, doesn't matter which hands you use, with the prefrontal cortex, yeah. And it's about how we move information from the brainstem to the frontal lobes. And the other part is the top and bottom of the brain, the emotional brain. And all of these three have their relationship with the triune brain as the brain stem. We have a brain stem, the first brain, the reptilian brain. And that's all about autonomic functions. It's about survival, fight or flight, 4 Fs, I think: fight, flight, feeding, and fornication. And freeze, yeah. And appetite. So it's very, very basic, and all information comes up through the brainstem first. This is the last place to get information. We get like 40,000 bits of information per second. We're only conscious of about 40. Yeah. So most of it, we're only conscious of what we need to survive. The middle part of the brain, the limbic brain, is the emotional brain. It's all about nurturing and simple emotions. And the cortex and the neocortex is about thoughts, meaning, logic, feelings about feelings. It's creative, amazing brain we have. Yeah. So we all need to know a little bit more about our brains. I think some people do. It's really getting out there. Some people know much more about their phones than their brains. It's time that we're all aware of this incredible thing we have in this beautiful skull. It's about 3 pounds in weight. Your brain has a 25 wattage of electricity. And with this small volume, the brain houses between 10 and 100 billion bits of information, with the possible 1 quadrillion connections. So the brain's just amazing. You'd have a whole warehouse of the top computers, and you wouldn't come close to doing what a 3-year-old's brain can do. But we need to understand what helps our brain, what makes it function at a less than optimal level. So what happens when we're stressed is that we'll lose about 80% of the blood in our forebrains. This is where we do our highest thinking, our best decisions. About 80% of the blood will leave to go to the brainstem. And so we just can react or fight or flee. So we could be driving down the road, not chased by a saber-toothed tiger, which we were, a few hundred years ago, but just driving now with the amount of traffic and road rage. We can get stressed, or we'll perceive ourselves as non-safe, and the brain reacts the same way as we would have done if we were being chased by a tiger or a bear. So it'll switch off, a lot of this part of the brain which we need for higher order thinking. We'll also switch off our less dominant hemisphere. We all have a favourite hemisphere, a favourite dominant hand, eye, ear, and leg. We'll switch off the less dominant parts of ourselves in order to have the ability to react really quickly, know which leg to take to run as fast as we can. And we're then in a not a very able state. We're able to protect ourselves or be in this state, but unless we reset that, we can stay in that state. And there are people walking around chronically stressed with a lot of the functions of their brain switched off. So in order to reset our brains, we have to come back into the body, and we have to move. So doing pace takes 2 or 3 minutes. Take some water, do the brain buttons, cross your midline with cross crawling, and the hookups movement, which will bring everything back to the periphery, because we lose all our energy in our blood to the periphery, not all of it, but a lot of it to the periphery, in order to have blood in our legs and arms to run or fight. But a lot of things now are stressing people out because they don't feel so safe in the world.
Yeah.
But we make our best decisions when we're feeling safe. So coming back to feeling safe and in our bodies, the first thing is breathing. So breathing immediately accesses, if you breathe deeply, you can trick your brain into feeling it's really safe.
Okay.
By taking a deep breath into the base of your lungs, and there's cell receptors in the base of your lungs that get activated and send a message to your brain, your conscious mind, and every cell of your body that, oh, I'm safe, it's okay. And then that's one really simple way. The other one is just to, in that state, just give attention to your heart, as they do in heart math. And, you know, the highest way is to think of something you can be grateful for in that moment. But the premise of Brain Gym is that by moving, you satisfy the need to move through danger, and then you bring yourself back into your body again. So I ask myself several times a day, several times an hour, what do I need? You know, how do I feel? What do you need, Tanya? And I think over many years, after hearing so many times from so many different things I've read and trained in, the importance of coming back to your body and asking yourself, how do you feel? What do you need? That act of self-love, it's really as simple as that. We need to learn to love ourselves. But when we're in that whole brain state, when we've brought ourselves back into that whole brain state, we're in a place where we can make the highest decision. We can hear the messages in our actually more active brain, our heart and our gut, as you well know, and probably Roland McCrating's talked about this. Your heart and your brain have brain cells that in fact send 80% more messages to the brain than the other way around. And we're only going to access that if this is on and if we're really relaxed and feeling safe. So the breath is key and movement is key, and asking yourself, how do I feel? What do I need? And that, when we hear that inner voice, we are able to make decisions based on a much more intuitive higher brain. So for example, we can learn from our past by looking back on difficult things that have happened to us and say, right, well, what did I learn from that? Oh yes, da, da, da. We can learn from difficult things when we're in them, and in really difficult times that we may find ourselves in, which by looking at, okay, what am I learning from this? It's a much quicker way to get out of it and help the physiology to be in a place where you can move into a better space and accept, okay, this is where it is, now what can I learn? You can move on. The other way is to be so whole-brained, because you've learned techniques like this, that you'll be driving down the road and you hear that little inner voice that's the higher wisdom, the brain messages from the gut and the heart coming all the way to the frontal cortex that says, oh, slow down, slow down. It's a very small, wise voice, that little voice. And if you are whole brain, you'll hear it. And the logic brain will come in, oh, but why? It's a green light. And you listen to your heart. And in fact, there's a car, you slow down and there's a car that's gone through the red light in the other way. So you avoid, what could be a really nasty collision. And if we're operating like that in the world as it is right now, we'll always find ourselves guided to be in the right place at the right time, making the highest decisions, finding ourselves meeting the right people, getting the right opportunities, because we're listening to our higher wisdom. And I'm finding this out all the time in my life, that I've learned how to be in this place. But 95% of my day, probably more sometimes, occasionally less, but I know what to do to quickly get back. For example, I recently had to, I chose to fly to England to be with my dear mother, who's getting very old now. And I'm not too keen on flying. So I've been watching that thought and thinking, okay, how can I change my attitude about this? I'm just going to be open to the best possible experiences and having really nice flights. So I relaxed and thought, okay, I'm going to have to get on the plane and it's just going to be great. So I get to the airport and it was a full flight, but I happened to get 3 seats all to myself in the back, which was a delight. And then the same thing happened on the way back, where I happened to be next to really lovely, really interesting people. And the flights were a breeze. And so my new thought is that actually flying is a lot of fun. I think one other thing I'd like to add is that as we slow down, as we learn to breathe deeply, as we learn to listen more to our bodies, calming down using this hookups movement, we start to notice more and more of our thinking and that inner dialogue. And we start to become more aware that who is it that's watching that? There's a higher part of us that's often called the witness, just watching. There's never judgmental of us, and just sort of watching that thinking. And as we slow down and hear this inner dialogue, we can start to choose the thoughts we'd rather have. So, choosing a higher thought. If you find yourself looking in the mirror and saying, well, I don't look like the way I used to, or or my bum looks big in this, or whatever people say, we change that thought. And actually, I'm just loving myself just the way I am. So the more we accept ourselves and catch that thinking, keep putting it into a higher thought, the more our inner physiology changes.
Fantastic.
So yeah, slowing down is how we access that.
Brilliant. Tanya, I could talk to you all day, but we are drawing to the end of our time together. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to just talk a little about the generous incentives that you're offering to subscribers of the summit who may like to work with you. Could you just finish with that for a minute or two?
I'd love to. Thank you, Julia. Well, I just love to offer something that people might want to, if they want to work with me, I'd be delighted and very honoured. I do training programs 4 times a year in New Orleans. I hold a 3-day training and brain gym. I do online programs, up 2 hours or 1-day training programs. All the information is on my website. And I do one-to-one work with people specifically for very private work, or when they can work with issues in their life. And we do what are called balances. And that's a lot of fun too. I'll work with Zoom like we've done today. And I'm offering 33% off everything I do. I'm also going to offer 3 free sessions for your listeners, and I'll do a draw at the end of the summit and contact them. And all you need to do is go onto my link and send me an email with the title in the
Brilliant.
Saying the summit. You'll see the information on the page.
I was just going to jump in and say absolutely. So all of that information is on your speaker page.
Yeah.
Super. Well, that's wonderful, Tanya. That I hope many people take you up on that, because I'm just listening to you here and doing the exercises is so much more interesting, and just really lovely to get embodied in the moment, and it's so simple to do. So I'd really recommend that people do it, and it ties in so brilliantly with Brain Gym and the 3 principles of psychology and understanding thinking that I do. So everything you say, I know is, it sounds like the truth to me, because that's it's so aligned with the stuff that I teach as well. Yeah. So thank you. So yes, we draw to a close. I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
That's my pleasure as well. I'd love to just add finally, as a last minute, that just for people to remember, just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Spend more time in nature, connecting with people, smiling. Often smiling tricks your brain into producing wonderful chemicals, even if you don't feel like smiling. I mean, just try and raise your eyebrows and say, I'm depressed. It's a bit difficult, So we can trick our brains. So keep it simple.
Yeah.
Bring joy into your life, smile often, and culture a sense of trust that the world is going through big changes. and we're going to come out the other end. I can see so many fantastic organizations supporting a better world, and it's just a matter of time before, you know, it all starts to be the world, building the world that we really want to be in. So just trust and relax, be in your body, smile, and bring joyful experiences into life. Keep it simple. That's my motto.
Tanya, wonderful words of wisdom. Let's leave it there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Lovely to talk to you, Julia. Bye.